what Dana said about me, oh, you're not going to step in the octagon again, blah, blah, blah. Those things are the one that shows most, not my 798 fights that I did, right. They don't care. They care what about what you did wrong.
It's Mario Yamasaki. Thank you for stopping in, man. How's everything going?
Everything is great, man. Thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure.
I wanted to start by asking you, man, I had read that your family has been teaching martial arts in Brazil for some time now, right? Do you know more or
Yes.
less how early on they got into it and maybe the reason why that started to happen?
Yes. My father and my uncle, they're Japanese descendant. And on the World War II, they were 9 years old, 11 years old, and they were being bullied in Brazil. So my grandfather put them in judo. And back then, judo was just, starting over there. And around 1949, 52, something like that. And it was all in the places like, farms and very no mats and, just those things that, the cattle that they eat at and they just throw that on top of it. So then, they had two lineage, in São Paulo for judo, one of being Ono. So my father went to Ono, and they became one of the best judo practitioners, in Brazil. They were qualified for the Olympics, but then back then, didn't have weight classes, all weights. So they put a heavy guy to go. Even though my father, beat him up, they put him to the Olympics. And then later on, they opened their own, the first gym in 1956, I think, was the first gym. And they had 14 gyms in Brazil. They got, some Pan American champions, some, world champions. My cousin competed in Barcelona in 92 in judo. My brother was qualified for wrestling, but they didn't have, the federation didn't have the money to take them to the Olympics. So then, we start teaching in my father's gym when we were 14, 15 years old, starting helping them out. And then when I was 17, 18, my father sold all the gyms. My uncle kept, couple gyms. And so I was a little frustrated because, he sold the gyms. He became a lawyer. And then I started, I'm not going to do it anymore. I stopped it for a little bit. And then I started teaching kids judo. And I met Marcelo Bering, my master in jiu-jitsu. And I thought I was a tough guy, in my area. And I just got my ass kicked by him. And I told my brother, I said, wow, we thought about, we're tough. This, guy is tougher. And in the martial arts that he does is, because before in judo, we were prohibited to go and do jiu-jitsu. So they didn't want us to mix. And I said, we have to. And then we got banned by, from judo. But the jiu-jitsu also community didn't accept us because we came from judo. So our life's always been hard to get into the system, but we are warriors and we got in.
Absolutely. And, you seem to be from a family, again, that seems to be very ingratiated in the culture of MMA, right? And I'm always curious with a family like that. Like, if you, when you were younger, you had said, I want to go do something else. I don't want to approach this whole martial arts thing, being that, your brother, your father, your uncle were in it. Would you think they would have been okay with you going and pursuing something else? Or was it just so much of a family thing that they wanted you to pursue it as well?
Well, let me put it this way. My son, I gave him a choice. You can choose one martial arts or one, how do you call it? Sorry, I was talking in Portuguese right now.
Don't worry, man.
You can choose any sport you want, okay? But you're gonna do two. One is gonna be jiu-jitsu, the other one you can choose. And my father said the same thing. You're gonna do judo, and then you can choose anything you want. I did soccer, basketball. I did a lot of surfing. So we're very athletic people. So we don't say, oh, you're not gonna do this. You can do it. But my son, and they asked me, is your son's gonna be a fighter? If he's gonna be a fighter, it's up to him. He's gonna know how to fight. So that's basically what we go in we live for.
You said two sports was better, right? Was it important to find a sport outside of martial arts to stay busy as well? Was that something important?
Well, I think we believe that sports take you out of the trouble, and you focus. Like my son now, he wants to be a soccer player. So he's very dedicated. He swims, he runs, he goes by himself. He's not anybody pushing him. That's his dream. So I'm pushing him to do that. I'm helping him whatever he needs so he can pursue his dream. Because I didn't do any college, and I came here. I was 24 years old, and so I had to do everything from scratch. Do work. Like cutting grass, painting this and that until I could do what I want. So I tell him all the time. I tell them, both of my kids, use everything that you learn in life as your step. So you want to do something, is a knowledge. So you get knowledge, then you move on. You just don't stay put in one place. And I told them, I said, I want you guys to do college at least. It doesn't matter what you do. You can do ballet, you can do music, but just the process to going through that is good for your life. Your responsibility to you have to deliver essays and all that. So that is experience that I didn't have. I want them to have because it's always help.
I fully agree. I fully think that I think sports, there's something beautiful to sports even beyond that. If you notice in the world, there's a lot of racism and things like that, right? But if you notice, there's nothing that brings people together like a good sports team, right? Like,
Exactly.
even in, let's say, martial arts, right? When you're watching a great fight and you sort of don't care who's in the crowd, right? It's sort of like a great way to unify people, I think, sports in general. I think
Yes.
it's a
Yes.
beautiful thing. And I think it's powerful, honestly.
It is. It is.
Speaking of the whole MMA stuff, right? I was going to ask you
Yeah.
how did you sort of get your start as a referee in mixed martial arts?
Well, when I was young, my uncle and my father went 5 times to Olympic Games as international referees in judo. So they are the only ones that could teach classes in Brazil for referees, and they used me, my brother, my cousin as fake fighters. So we commit fouls and we do all that so they can teach the newly coming referees. So I learned, the mechanics and all movements and how to be precise and what to look for and where to position ourselves. So when the Vale Tudo came, in Brazil started as a Vale Tudo, nobody wanted to referee because in jiu-jitsu, if you referee and you tie and you have Carson Gracie on one side and then Ryan Gracie on the other, cussing and say, and if you give a result to one and you're going to get beat outside. So it's always people are afraid of refereeing because it was really rough. And we liked it. We always did it. We always, push everybody around and did it. And so when they start Vale Tudo, we said, okay, we do it. We start doing it. We didn't even know, because everything goes back then. And then when I came, I came to the US and all the, my history of opening the gym and all that started. When I went to the UFC, we were responsible for taking the UFC first time in Brazil in 1998. So when they did it, the UFC in Brazil, I met everybody backstage. I met John McCarthy and all that. And I said, John, why are you the only referee in UFC? What about if you get sick or you get hurt? So, we were looking for somebody. Do you know anybody? So I raised my hand and I start, I pay my own ticket to go to the places like, Birmingham, Alabama. I pay my ticket to go there, get a hotel. And I used to stay, outside the venue because they had a lady called Paula. She used to give all the credentials. And I used to wait until the end because she said, if a credentials, if you have any left, you get in. If not, then you can go. So every time I waited, and I always had, some extra credentials. I went in and John let me, referee the first fights, the preliminary couple fights. And then I went 2, 3, 4 times and they invited me to go to Japan, UFC Japan. And then I said, now you guys have to, do a contract with me because I'm not going to be paying me for, So they hire me. UFC hired me directly there. And then, after that came the commissioners, and everything started changing, and here we are today.
And when they brought you on, did they have a lot of referees that were on sort of like Big John that, that it was expected that you're going to see them in with the UFC, for the further future? Like, were there a lot of referees or no?
None. Just
Wow.
me and John.
Literally just you and John?
And then, and then Larry Landless came. Then Herb came. And then they used to take us to all the places, and we do classes for the referees and judges on the, every state that we went. And so they let them referee on the preliminary. So we started teaching them until, we became a global. I went to Mexico, England, Japan. So I always had some referees there, local. So we could, use them on the preliminary. So we can start teaching them. So we're not just us.
Yeah, absolutely. And so early on, because this is interesting, it was just you and John, you said. So you guys had to, like, I guess, alternate between fight, like you go, now I go, you go. Now, wow, that's crazy. Now, as a referee, I would think you have to be pretty sharp, right? So is there like a mental fatigue that comes to when you're on like your fourth, fifth fight of the night? Let's say it's like the co-main event and like it's almost over. And you're like, man, this is like my fifth fight. Like, oh, I'm not that into. Is there something to that? Like how many, let me ask you that. How many at the time, was that difficult? But now, because I don't really realize, how many fights do refs do per night, like on average now? I wanted to ask you those two things.
Yeah. Now the beginner, like on the referees that are starting now, they do like maximum 2 fights, the preliminaries, and then we do the rest. But usually we don't do more than 3 fights a night. Maximum 4.
This is now, right?
This is now. Before, if we had 8 fights, I do 4. John do 4. He always did the main events. All the best fights, he got it. And I didn't care. I was just learning and having an experience of my life. I was traveling all over the world. It was a great experience.
So, and aside from, Big John sort of maybe helping you with that opportunity, right? Maybe putting in a word with the UFC, did he help you out as far as like the technical aspect of being a referee? Like, did he give you a lot of pointers as you guys worked together?
Always. Because, he was there from the beginning. So he started, because the UFC used to talk to him a lot because, they didn't know anything about it. He didn't even know. So they start talking to make the MMA rules. Because when they start, it used to be 3 fights per night. Same guy would fight 3 fights. And then they became, they changed to 1 fight a night. And then, timing, and then rounds. So all that started to, evolve. And this evolution, me and John always talked, he always being my mentor. Everything I ask him, he always answer. He's a really nice guy. He has a mind of an elephant. He doesn't forget anything. So he talks about fights that happened 20 years ago, and I was like, oh my God. So he's really knowledgeable. He's really nice. He wants the sport to grow. So he always helped me.
And obviously being a referee, especially in MMA, could seem like such a high pressure job, right? Like it seems like of all the jobs, that kind of is like, again, the most high stakes job, right? Like one mistake could be so crucial, except for maybe being, the 2 fighters in there. When you were in there, right? Maybe it could have been like a conversation with John as you were ready to, sort of embark on your UFC referee journey. It could have been just a talk with anybody else, or just something that you had to figure out yourself. Did you know going into it, like, this is a job where if I make a mistake, people are going to be mad, fighters, fans? Like, were you fully aware of the consequences that came with maybe making a mistake as a ref? Like, were you aware of those things going into it?
Yes, because judo is really, strict on that. And especially, back then was a different point system. So if you go out and I'm sitting on the side, my gesture has to be, it has to be right there, like in a second. So for you to become an international referee in judo, it takes a long time. You have to do a lot of, competitions. And if you're not sharp, you're not going to go in. So MMA is the same. You gotta think, a split second. what are you gonna do? Is he knocked out? He's just knocked down? Are you gonna let him go, or you're gonna stop the fight? Those are really important. So I live with that for my entire life. So that pressure doesn't bother me. Like for example, you have 25,000 people in the arena screaming. In Brazil, for example, when they went to the second time, I had the Jose Aldo and Chad Mendes. They had a fight before I ref, and I disqualified the guy in Brazil. And, it was a really, really big hit on me because everybody started,
Especially in Brazil,
screaming
right?
and
You know
saying
how
that I made.
serious they take
Oh,
it there.
fuck. And
Right?
then, yeah, the guy, yeah. So then for me, that was hard. And I said, and somebody told me, oh, don't go to because I was going to do the main event. And said, don't do the main event, they're going to kill you, blah, blah, blah. And I said, you know what? This is like swimming. If I almost die swimming, if I never go back in the water, I'm never going to go back in the water. So let me go and then fuck it. Let's put it. So then I went and, I did what I did and that's it. Mistakes everybody makes. My biggest mistake is going always true to the rule. You grab the fence, is a foul. You poke in the eye, is a foul. You knee on the balls, is a foul. So those things I always very strict because of judo. But on TV, MMA is different. You see people going, like a lot of referees going, let it go, knee on the balls or this and that, or the guy stop, like for I'm gonna take you down, you stop on the fence. That's a big foul because you changed the course of the fight. So I used to be strict on that, and I got really criticized for that. So, and then I want to, like for example, Mike Chiesa, Chiesa, he went out. I mean, I'm being jiu-jitsu for entire life in judo. His arm was here, all of a sudden goes like this, and he because I was so fast, he came out fast, and then he says that his technique is just to relax it and relax his muscle. I I don't know if you know about rear naked choke. If you relax, you're gonna die. So how are you gonna just relax? That's a technique? No. So people criticize, oh, you stopped too early, you didn't move his hand. I didn't need to do that. But
When you're in
then
a,
with Valentina,
do you look at the clock when you're in a situation like that or not at all? Do you look
no,
like, all
not at
right, there's
all.
20 somethings? Not at all. You just look at the
No,
fight.
because we have a 10-second signal. So the 10-second signals I know.
Okay.
I don't need to be looking at only the 10 seconds. That's how it's gonna my reaction is gonna be from there. So and then Valentina Shevchenko and Pedrita, I didn't check. Because see, that's the other thing that when you start become famous, I was in Brazil and then I start interviewing here, interview there, and this and that, and sponsors and events that I have to take. So I didn't focus, and I didn't realize. But then when I was in the locker room, I said to both of them, I said, "Look, why are you defending yourself intelligently? I'm not gonna let the fight go." So every time Valentina is punching, punching, said, "I'm gonna stop the fight. I'm gonna stop the fight." She moved. So then I have to go by my words, and that's how I should have changed. So I learned my lesson. So everything is the sports evolve so fast, and so we just have to be constantly learning and changing our way of seeing things, because if you stay on the same place, it's going to change.
So you think it's completely normal for even someone like it's been in as long as a referee as you are, you're always learning. Is that what you're trying to say? Like even at that
Always
level, you're
learning.
always learning?
Always. Because see, the sports is new, is evolving. I started with no rules. You could headbutt. You could the only rules you had, there was no biting. But the rest you could do anything, even eye gouging and all this. So then it started evolving, from the beginning, like Tank Abbott trying to throw somebody from the fence. Then you couldn't throw anybody from the fence anymore. Joe Lober in Brazil with Pat Militech grabbing the shorts, on their ass all entire life, so entire fight, so you couldn't hold the shorts anymore from their own. So then you go to England, and the commission that wants to see this way, and then you go to Utah, they want to go see this way. So that's how they start unifying the rules, because it was driving us crazy. one state you can elbow, the other state you cannot elbow. One state you can do this, the other state you can't do that. You're always confusing. For my entire life was like that, changing always. So now the unified rules are in, is getting better and easier to do it. So it's much better now.
So speaking of now, if there was like a young man that wanted to become a referee, wanted to go about sort of something similar to what you went about, what do you think now is the best way to go about it? Right? You said that you were doing for judo as well, right? Early on, you said that the game is changing, it's evolving so much, right? So for any like young referees that are trying to get into MMA now, what do you think is the best course of action to prepare yourself for what some of the stuff you might experience in the UFC or in just any high level promotion, being an MMA ref? Yeah, not just UFC.
The first thing he should do is look for an instructor. Like, I have a course, John McCarthy has a course, Herb has a course.
There we go.
So take a course from one of the referees, and if you pass, then you have something to start going to the commissioner and say, look, I did the test, the course I passed, and then that's a relationship that has to create. And watch a lot of fights, but looking in a different way, looking in the referee's eyes, looking at the judge's eyes, because the referee eyes is one thing, the judge eyes is a different thing. They see two different things. And so that's why, it depends. You want to be a judge, you got to look for the fight the one way. You want to be a referee, you look to fight different way.
Who do you think are some of the best referees right now in the world of MMA? Like, who do you think does it about as good as you can possibly do it?
Well, Herb Dean is one of the best. What's the name of the guy from England?
Mark Goddard.
Mark Goddard is great.
Yeah.
They have, Hazard is good too. A bunch of them now is good because, when you're consistent, and you're working a lot, it becomes part of your daily, So all the 4 or 5 referees that they are on the UFC all the time now, they're pretty good. They're great. Everybody's gonna make a mistake. You there. So Herb made a mistake. John made a mistake. I made a mistake. And it's life. But what happens? What happens is in life, especially now with the media, the internet going very fast. You get your haters. Like, for example, let's say I referee 800 fights, and I fuck up in 4. The only thing that shows on my history is the 4 fuck ups that I did, because those are the ones that keep pushing. And sometimes it's not relevant, but that's there. What Dana said about me, oh, you're not going to step in the octagon again, blah, blah, blah. Those things are the one that shows most, not my 798 fights that I did, right. They don't care. They care what about what you did wrong. So, and that's why we say in Brazil, we casca grossa, thick skin. You got to build that, because if you don't do it, you're not supposed to be in here.
Yeah, and speaking of thick skin, obviously you just brought it up. Dana had some, harsh words for you, but are you sort of are you appreciative in a way for, the relationship you had with Dana and your time in the UFC? Looking back on it, is there some gratitude there?
I love it. I have no regrets. Without them, I would never visit the cities and states or countries that I did. They always treat me first class, like the hotels, everything was great. It's a cycle. I've been there for 20 years. And it's something that I loved. It gave me joy. It gave me happiness. It gave me fame and, money, and can't complain. They lost, not me, because I will continue, but he's just, media talk, and he's on his right. We had a relationship at the beginning when it was small, when they just bought it. I was there before Dana White. So when they bought it, he was really nice. We went out all the time, we talked, and we had, a close relationship, open relationship, like I could call him anytime. When it became a corporation, started to put people under him, and people are jealous and they start blocking you. So a lot of people start blocking us, going to, oh, you can't talk to Dana now, you have to talk to me. You can't do this, you have to do this, and then it became really cold. especially after they sold the last time, is even colder. So it's just a business now. It's not anymore of what we had before. I think, I lived on the glamour and all the best time of UFC. Was nobody never is gonna be back what we had before, ever.
Do you think the golden days are done
The golden days for us, right?
for
Or
referees?
for referees was because all the parties, all the stuff that we did, all this, was great. Now you go there, you work like a salary guy, boom, leave. You can't say anything, can't talk too much, can't.
Right now, you got the ESPN deal, so it's more corporate and
It's
all
a
that as
different,
well.
yes, it's a different story now. Still
So,
great though. Not saying it's not good, but
yeah. Do you still watch the product?
I do. Not all the time because I think it's too much now, but too many
Yeah.
every weekend. So I can't follow, unless it's somebody that I know. But sometimes I can every weekend be watching UFC. It's not me, but I still watch a lot.
Yeah. Let's say the UFC reached out and said, we'd love to have you come back, rep some fights. Is that something you'd be interested in doing based on some of the stuff you said or no?
For sure. For sure.
So even how it is now,
I
you
mean,
wouldn't
for
mind
you
going
for
in
you
there
to
stepping
see,
in.
I wouldn't go. Yeah, I wouldn't go back on my own now because it was really rough for my family. I spent 20 years, traveling every month. So a reporter went to my daughter one day, asked, is nice to have a famous father, blah blah blah, and she said, yeah, this guy's not, he's never in my birthdays, New Year's, he's never here. So my father is not here. He's a referee, but I miss my father. So now I'm home most of the time now, more than ever. But then I was, talking to my son. He said, "Dad, why don't you go back to UFC?" I said, "Son, I don't want to go back because of this reason, that reason." He said, "Yeah, but now I can go with you. I can travel with you." I said, "Oh, you're right."
Yeah.
I said, "Well, if a chance happens, then I'll go just for him to go back." But my stuff there, I did it. I have no wishes to do anything else. Like, I was the first referee, MMA referee at the Madison Square Garden, first referee in Mexico. I was the only Brazilian referee. So, for me, I did my run. If I go back now, it will be for joy and fun, not pressure, just, to bring my son to this game a little more so he can see what I did, and what I was before. I was in a video game. I had my doll, my bubblehead, my cards. So for me, what else do I want?
So as far as MMA, you sort of feel like you've done everything you can do already, right?
Well, because see, I don't want to be a coach anymore. I used to have some fighters and stuff, but I don't like to babysit, first of all. And then when the guy becomes a champion, then I have to start babysitting even more. They start not respecting, and all you did for him, well, after he's a champion, that he's know everything. So I don't like that. So I said, I'm not going to do it. Even my gyms, and we have, 15 gyms, and I started, but now my brother, take care of it. He runs it because I have a construction company now. So I'm a, general contractor, and I love because it's almost the same as MMA. Every day is a different thing, different problems, different fights. So I'm great.
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, of course I have a little. Of course I have a little. Like Dana. I think Dana was a little, too rush on me because I'm not that bad, And for 20 years there, and he always came to me. We talk a lot, and for him just to be a media guy, just destroy a guy. Oh, you're not going to step here anymore. I didn't. That wasn't that bad. But I think also because of what I said and things like that, because I had a public relation back then, and they told me to say that, and I said it as to let her be a warrior and blah blah blah, and that became the focus point on him. So,
So
and then I think he stopped saying bad things about referees and judge because if he keeps fighting everybody, he's not going to have anybody there. So they told him to, hey, back out because otherwise he's going to destroy the game.
And it's obviously something you must have really loved, right? Because you said the construction stuff. You had some schools outside of the refereeing, right? So it wasn't for money, right? So you must
No,
have really loved
never.
it. If it was a job that you get all that criticism, you already have the financial stuff. You must really love refereeing, huh?
I love it. I mean, for me, it was never for money. Always for. I never thought it would be this big. When I started on UFC 20, and I went. The first UFC was 1996 on Ultimate 96 with Tank Abbott, Chemo. They fought three fights a night. You know, so for me, it was always about the adrenaline, being in the middle of the mix. And we used to spar, whatever I spar with Coleman, Renderman, Randy Couture, Chuck Liddell. We always spar, in the hotel. So I used to love it because, I used to test myself and all those guys. So for me, it was great. Now it's different. Everything is different, but still great. Still, it's still
Absolutely.
a growing, and it's gonna grow more.
So last question, man. What are some of the things you like doing most now outside of refereeing? Like you like spending time with the family, things like that?
Yes, I do a lot of motivational speech now. Companies for companies and stuff. I do. I race go kart. That's a big adrenaline too. I love racing, and so I do stuff. Normal stuff. I train jujitsu. Yes, I train jujitsu. I do some gym stuff now. I'm gonna play celebrity soccer in Brazil in the 22nd. So I'm just living the life now. I can't complain too much. I'm 58 years old, happily married, 2 kids.
So what's the celebrity match you're doing here? What's up with that?
Well, in Brazil, they do a lot of celebrity, sports thing. They do volleyball, they do soccer, they do go-kart racing. And I do soccer and I do go-kart racing. And so every time they have something, they invite me, I go, and they have all these movie stars, the soap opera stars, the singers, and me.
Yeah,
And
sure.
so I love it. It's just fun, and we had a great time.
Do you like
Pretty
doing
good.
things that sort of keep you young still? Because those, soccer, go-karting,
Yeah.
those are things that you see. I'm not saying you're old or anything, but I'm saying, like, do you like to stay active like that? You like to do things like that to sort of keep yourself like in the youth spirit?
Yes, like for example, right? For me, I always say time doesn't exist. So time is here. If you're late to meet somebody, if you're waiting for somebody, it's very, So the thing is, time is here, and then also your age is here. Age isn't a paper. I was born in 1964, but I don't feel like that. I feel I'm 35, 40 years old. So I keep training, I keep doing moving, because I think life, when I talk to people, about kids, for example, I always say kids should do sports, at least one sport in their life. It should be going out of their comfort zone on their parents, either to another state on their country if they cannot go out internationally, but most likely international is the best thing to do. Go a year out and go learn, because then your brain expand. So you learn. You just always learning. And I for me, I'm creative, and then if you keep creating, you're never gonna have Alzheimer. If you just go sit down here and I, if I don't already did everything in my life, you know, I want to just sit down here. I could, because I have money coming in. I couldn't, but I can't do that. If I stay here, I want to get my grandkids. I want to be able to pick up my grandkids and throw in the air, because, movements, go up the stairs, down the stairs, get in the car, get out of the car. Those are important things when you start getting old. And it's funny that I was in Brazil. I took my son to a soccer game, and I went to the metro, and they had the seats, like those 60 in Brazil, 60 years old, you're already old man. So I said, "Oh, my son, I said, 2 years I can just sit over there, and you don't pay, buses and trucks,
Oh
and you can
man,
park on the old spot. In 2 years I can do that, but I'm still moving. I'm still young, so I don't know.
he's there
It's
to
all
remind
here."
you anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, is it nice to have a just son that you could sort of give advice from your past experiences as well?
It's great. I always wanted to do that. I always wanted to have kids so I can talk, can talk back to me. We can teach. But one thing that I learned is I can educate your kids, but I cannot educate my kids. When heart's involved, when love is involved, it's really hard for you to do it. So then I'm learning as it goes too, because it's really hard to raise people. So, but if I'm teaching is one thing, if it's my own family is a different thing. So I always push them away from me to learn, because then they can learn. Because they don't listen to what you say. They only do what they see you doing. So
That's definitely an
that's
interesting
my
perspective. Yeah.
example.
Keep that in mind. All right,
Yeah.
guys. So it looks like that's going to wrap up our time here. Mario, thank you so much for stopping in, sharing some of the time, some of the stories with us. We wish you and your family all the best. A happy new year. And again, man, thanks for coming by.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here.